Hello students, welcome to first competitive lecture of chemistry in everyday life. In these lectures we will discuss about some additional details regarding to drugs or food items or cleansing agents which weren't mentioned in the textbook, and we will know about some other type of drugs as well. So we are aware of what drugs can do and how we can use it and why we are using it. But here certain points are mentioned and let's go through them. So drugs may be single chemical substance or a combination of two or more different substances. An ideal drug should satisfy the following requirements. First, when administered to the ailing individuals or host, that means ill or poor health containing host, its action should be localized at the site where it is desired to act. In actual practice, there is no drug which behaves in this manner. That means, let's say we have a tumor inside a certain part of body, and we want drugs acting against the tumor cells only. So it is a specific target for that drug. But with that tumor, these drug molecules will also attack on some healthy molecules as well, or healthy cells as well. So we do not have such perfect drugs. So second point, it should act on a system with efficiency and safety. It should have minimum side effect. It should not injure host tissues or physiological processes, and the cell should not acquire resistance to the drug after some time. So last point is trying to say, let's say we have some illness causing microbials or bacteria inside the body. So after certain period, from the certain type of drugs, these microbials or bacteria will acquire resistance. That means they won't feel a strong effect or proper effect from the drug, and that's why we cannot cure those bacterial effects from that drug. Okay, so drug should be these type of bacteria or viruses should not acquire resistance from drugs. So the term chemotherapy, which literally means the chemical therapy or chemical treatment, was coined in 1913 by Paul Ehrlich, the father of modern chemotherapy. He defined the chemotherapy as use of chemicals or drugs to injure or destroy infectious microorganisms without causing any injuries to host. Then we have different type of drugs. First is antipyretic. So antipyretic drugs are being used for the treatment of fever. In fever, usually body temperature increases, and increased temperature is not suitable for biological reactions inside the body. Our body is designed to act at specific type of pH values or specific type of temperatures. If temperature is more or less than the range which requires by certain biological reactions, then all of those reactions will be disturbed and they cannot act normally. So that's why antipyretic drugs are used, which are responsible for the lowering of the temperature of feverish body. The central nervous system, especially hypothalamus, plays an important role in maintaining the balance between the heat production and heat lost in the order to regulate the body temperature. So hypothalamus is thus known as the thermostat of the body. Okay, thermostats are instruments which controls the temperature. So these antipyretic drugs help to reset the thermostat at the normal temperature. Heat production is not inhibited, but heat loss is increased by the increased peripheral body flow, which increases the rate of perspiration. This causes body to lose heat and subsequently lower the body temperature. And then we have few informations regarding to such drugs. So first drug, as mentioned, it is aspirin. It is already mentioned inside the textbook, and certain other type of drugs are also mentioned. Aspirin is one of the important antipyretic, and other antipyretics are phenacetin, paracetamol, novalgine, and phenylbutazone. So aspirin, structure of aspirin is as mentioned here, acetyl salicylic acid. So it is a compound of salicylic acid. Aspirin should not be taken empty stomach. Some persons are allergic to aspirin, and aspirin is also used for heart treatment as mentioned in textbook because it decreases the viscosity of blood and thus thicker blood applies more pressure on the heart, and thinner blood applies less pressure. That's why heart needs to work comparatively less. Then the second type of drugs are analgesic drugs, and they are already discussed in the textbook. So these type of drugs are used to decrease the pain. We have two different types, narcotics and non-narcotics. Narcotic drugs are comparatively very high efficiency. It has very high efficiency towards the decreasing pain treatment, whereas non-narcotics have comparatively less effect. But narcotics drugs has many different side effects. They are addictive and produce analgesia and sleep, and in high doses can cause unconsciousness. So they are very potent drug, and their chronic use lead to addiction. So these are few problems with the narcotic drugs, and that's why they are banned and they are not used in normal condition. If extreme requirement is there, then we are allowed to use narcotic drugs, but in normal conditions they are not allowed. That's why in normal condition we use non-narcotic drugs. And example of such non-narcotic drugs are as follow: ibuprofen, structure of ibuprofen is mentioned, analgin, diclofenac sodium, and naproxen. Then next we have antimicrobials, and again discussion was already done in the textbook, but let's discuss some more points. The control of microbial diseases can be achieved by the following three ways. First, by drug which kills the organism in the body, which are known as bactericidal. Second, by drug which inhibits or arrests the growth of the organism, which are known as bacteriostatic. And third, by increasing the immunity and the resistance to the infection of the body, that means immunity. So last point is also known as immunity booster. Then next category is antiseptics and disinfectants. So we already discussed about them in the textbook. Antiseptics are used to make tissues or living organism free from germ, and disinfectants are used for inanimate object, that means non-living objects or surfaces of our daily uses. And example of disinfectants are as mentioned Cl2 or Dettol. Dettol is also a brand name, but it uses certain type of chemicals. As mentioned, it is a mixture of chloroxylenol and terpineol. It is already mentioned in textbook. Then we have bithionol, iodine, low concentration of sulfur dioxide, dilute aqueous solution of boric acid, iodoform, hydrogen peroxide. Hydrogen peroxide are normally used disinfectants or antiseptics. We use it regularly, and it comes in bottle, airtight bottle, and when we apply it on the wounds, it creates foam. Actually, bubbles are created because of liberation of oxygen. Oxygen will act against the bacteria or microorganism, and that's why we use it to clean wounds. Then next, hexachloro uh, amyl metacresol, thymol, which is mentioned here, a natural occurring phenol derivative thymol, and structure of amyl metacresol is also mentioned. They share similar type of structure. Then next category is antibiotics. It is one of the very important category. A chemical substance produced by or derived from the living cell which is capable of inhibiting the life processes or even destroying microorganism is called antibiotics. And details are as mentioned on your screen. Some basic information is mentioned here. And here is a general structure of penicillin. Penicillin is a type of chemical, and we can replace different type of reactive group R here so that we can get different type of penicillin drugs. Two different type of molecules are attached together in the formation of penicillin, cysteine and valine as mentioned here, and the different type of attachments on the R and their values with the name of the compounds are as mentioned in this table, so you can check it yourself. So here is the details. Then we have different examples of antibiotic. First is streptomycin. and it is effective against the tuberculosis or TB, and it is also effective in the treatment of meningitis and pneumonia. So that means it acts against specific type of bacteria, and this is the structure. It is a very complicated one, so it is the structure of streptomycin. Second one is chloramphenicol, and the structure of chloramphenicol is as mentioned. It is broad spectrum drug, so that's why it is effective against the certain gram positive and gram negative bacteria. Some rickettsias are a type of bacteria and viruses. So it is very effective in the treatment of typhoid fever, paratyphoid fevers, diarrheas or dysentery. It is also specific for influenza, meningitis, pneumonia, whooping cough and urinary tract infections. Then next we have tetracycline. So as we can see, tetracycline has very complex structure. So different type of attachments can give different type of molecules. So tetracyclines are a group of molecules. Then we have an important category, sulfur drugs. So these are the synthetic chemotherapeutic agents which contains sulfanilamide SO2 NH2 group in their structure. These were the first effective chemotherapeutic agents to be widely used for the cure of the bacterial infections in the humans. They have also been found to be active against the gram positive and gram negative Kochi bacilli and protozoa. At present, sulfonilamides have been largely replaced by antibiotics for the treatment of most of the bacterial diseases. Some useful sulfonilamide drugs are as given below. So here are the few examples of these type of sulfur drugs. So they share some similarities and some difference, and we have multiple different type of these type of drugs. Name and uses of these drugs are mentioned in this table. Next we have antihistamines. We already discussed about antihistamines in the textbook, so we know about it. The common antihistamine drugs are as mentioned here with their chemical as well as common name. That means when we go to the medical store, we refer or we know these medicines from their manufacturer's name, not from their chemical formulas or chemical names. So as mentioned, diphenylhydramine, it is referred as Benadryl. Phenyramine maleate is known as Avil. Chlorpheniramine is known as Zet. Promethazine triprolidine is known as Actidil. Antazoline is known as Antistine. Dimethindine is known as Forestal. And their structures are as we can see on the screen. Next category is anesthetics. It may be defined as those drugs which produces insensibility to the vital functions of all type of cells, especially of the nervous system. Anesthetics may be classified into two groups on the basis of their applications. First is general anesthetics. So these type of drugs depress the central nervous system so such an extent that all the sensitivity to the pain or feeling is lost. That is, they produce unconsciousness all over the body. These are used for major surgical operations. These may be used in the form of gas, example nitrous oxide, cyclopropane, ethylene, or may be given in the injection form, for example sodium pentothal. And structure of sodium pentothal is as we can see on screen. Second type of these type of anesthetics are local anesthetics. These affects only a part of the body, insensitive to pain or feeling. That means suppose we want to operate on leg, then we can inject the drug on the leg and only leg will be senseless or it will be insensitive. Common local anesthetics are xylocaine, ethyl chloride or proclain. These are used for small surgical operations like tooth extraction, stitching of a wound or incision of abscess. Some other modern local anesthetics are alpha, eucaine, orthocaine and dimethysoquine. Next, tranquilizers or hypnotics. So these drugs are used for the release mental tension and it reduces anxieties. And then next we have different type of these type of drugs, sedatives, antidepressant, and we already discussed about these types in textbook. So let's move on. Next category, anti-malarials. So malaria is highly widespread infectious diseases caused by sporozoa of genus Plasmodium. It is characterized clinically by periodic fever, anemia, and enlargement of the liver and spleen. The four species Plasmodium vivax, Plasmodium malaria, Plasmodium ovale, and Plasmodium falciparum are responsible for the malaria in man. Thus, there are four types of malaria. So, as we can see, all of these four types of different protozoas and their causes. The chemotherapy of malaria is connected with the different stages in the cycle of malarial parasite. The mosquito injects the parasite into the blood of the human being. It immediately goes to the liver cells where it multiplies. Once the parasites have grown in the numbers, these come to the blood and enter the red corpuscles where they also multiply. Eventually, the red cell bursts, liberating the parasites as well as toxins. These toxins causes fever, chills, and rigor. The liberated parasites attack the fresh red cells and the cycle continues. So let's say if one parasite enters into the blood cell and it multiplies, and when the cell bursts, it releases only, let's count a smaller figure, 100 new parasites. So there's 100 new parasites will enter in 100 more blood cell, and next phase it will be more larger scaled. So depending upon the periodicity of the cycle in the red cell, fever comes on alternate days, once in 3 days or once in 4 days. Some of the liberated parasites go back to the liver and continue the cycle there as well. The choice of antimalarial drugs depends on the point of its action on the life cycle of the malarial parasite. Various drugs used are, as the list suggests, we have few different type of drugs depending on the type of parasite. So first is primaquine. It destroys the sporozoites in the liver. It is too toxic and its long-term use is not advisable. Next is chloroquine, proguanil, and pyrimethamine. This kills the parasites in blood. And last category is anti-fertility drug, and it is already discussed in the textbook, so we are not going to discuss it here again. And these are the structures of the different type of drugs used in this category.